it's a it is a revolutionary movement, and then we also, uh, as we're following in the footsteps of the great acharyas, they come as reformers. So I first offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to all the great acharyas, and to everyone who's joined the call today or who will listen to this later. Vanchakalpalibhishcha kripasinabhevacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha nantakoti vaishnaviniki jai gaur premanande haribo. We've been celebrating Bhaktivinoda Thakur's disappearance day over the weekend. It's been a focal point for us at ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We're called ISV. It stands for ISKCON of Silicon Valley, but internally it stands for individual, spontaneous, and voluntary, which are the three principles Prabhupada told Karandar once in a letter, through which we can inspire devotees. That is, he said, create an atmosphere in which devotees want to do service that's individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. And the great acharyas, like Srila Prabhupada, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, showed how one, from an ordinary position in life, or from a fallen position, I should say, which is the ordinary position here in the material world, can, in a practical way, come to the highest stage of devotional service through the various principles given by the Goswamis of Vrindavan, inculcated in them by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They actually make it practical for us. It's not unreasonable. In fact, it's the most reasonable thing according to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a spiritual genius. He was from the spiritual world, and he wrote hundreds of books for all levels of audience, but he also wrote songs. And in the songs, he embedded the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he, in his notations on the songs that he wrote, said these, and he would designate certain songs, are meant for patrolling around town. In other words, the devotees would go out and sing in public, and people would be attracted to the music and the presentation. And then, of course, in Bengali, they would hear the words, and they'd become inspired by the instruction. That was one of the ways that Bhaktivinoda Thakur spread Krishna consciousness. Every one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs was a hit. There were no throwaways. Sometimes when ordinary people try to write songs or poetry, there's a B-side. It's like, oh yeah, you got a hit here. And sometimes people are a one-hit wonder. One-hit wonder means Chubby Checkers, 1960s, he made the twist. He got so tired of singing the song, it was his only song. Sorry if I'm underplaying Chubby Checkers, but he didn't have voluminous repertoire. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, everything he wrote, because it was spontaneously flowing from his pure heart, and because he was a spiritual genius, musically it was perfect, and poetically it was perfect. He also wrote in several languages. Imagine that, being poetical in several languages. Some people can eke out a few words or a sentence or two, or maybe even hold a conversation in a language. But when you write poetry, and good poetry, not just you get a rhyming dictionary, say, let's see, cat rhymes with rat, so I'll put that in this line. No, his flowed through from spontaneous heart, this internal energy. That's why his songs are so powerful. They're windows to the spiritual world. In fact, wherever we sing them, we find that the audience goes crazy, even if they don't know what the meaning is exactly. In Palo Alto, sometimes we sing during our Harinam some of the Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs because he wrote it and said this is for patrolling around town. So we figured we're patrolling around town, let's sing these songs and see what happens to the people of Palo Alto. And they go crazy. When they hear these songs, they start dancing and they don't know why. And we saw it in in Navadvip also, when we went to see Dhameshwara Mahaprabhu with our yatra, and we had over 100 devotees, and we were chanting Hare Krishna, and there was a group of 10 Mayavadi sannyasis there. They couldn't chant Hare Krishna. They stood there with sullen faces. But when we sang one of Bhaktivinoda Thakura's song, Doyal Nitai Chaitanya Bole Nachara, remember one? Even the Mayavadi sannyasis began dancing and rocking up and down and putting their arms in the air. So when the great Vaishnava reformer comes, he or she gives powerful medicine. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the Vaishnava is like a Vaidya, a doctor. Carries around a little bag, and he got instructions and hymns. So songs, beautiful poetry, and instructions. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura brought that as medicine for the world. Let's sing a song from Bhaktivinoda Thakura. We'll sing Radha Krishna Bo. And after that, we go a little bit more into the life and teachings of Bhaktivinoda Thakura. It's a short session we have here today, so I'll try to encapsulate some of the most important points that you could take away in your pockets and utilize on a daily basis. And feel free, if you like, to turn on your cameras, because when we see you smiling, then, or not, or we just see you in general, to see a Vaishnava is a great privilege, then the energy goes up by at least 6.5% per each window that opens. That's a proven fact.
I love these songs. Radha Krishna Bola.
Hare Krishna.
Radha Krishna Bola Bola.
Krishna Krishna. Avantika, give me a starting tune, starting note.
Okay.
Are you starting at C?
I'm starting at D right now.
Okay. Radha Krishna Bo Bo Bolo Re Shobha.
Radha Krishna Bolo Re Shobha.
Shri Radha Krishna Bol Bolo Re Shobha.
Shri Radha Krishna Bolo Re Shobha.
Shika Diya Shobna Diya Preche Neche Gorni Thai.
Shika Diya Shobna Diya Preche Neche Gorni Thai.
Hari Bolo Re Shika Diya. Radha Krishna Bol Bol Bolo Re Shobha. Niche Mayar Boshe Jacho Beshe Kacho Habudu Bubai. Hari Bolo Re Niche Mayar Boshe. Radha Krishna Bol Bol Bolo Re Shobha. Shri Radha Krishna Bol Bol Bolo Re Shobha. Shiv Krishna Das Hey Vishwas Kole To Ardu Konai Hari Bol Bolo Re Jiv Krishna Krishna Bol Bol Bolo Re Shobha Krishna Bolbe Jabe Pulaka Habe Jor Bian Ki Boli Thai Krishna Bolbe Jabe Pulaka Habe Jorbi Anki Boli. God, put your hands up now. Krishna Bolbe Jabe Pulaka Habe. Come on now, you got to put your hands up. Let me do it again. Krishna Bolbe Jabe Pulaka Habe Jorbi Anki Boli. Come on, Vaisesika. Pulaka Habe Hari Bol Bolo Krishna Bolbe Jabe Radha Krishna Bol Bolo Re Shobha Shri Radha Krishna Bol Bol Bolo Re Shobha Radha Krishna Bolo Shange Cholo E Matra Bika Chai Radha Hari Bol Bolo Radha Krishna Bolo Radha Krishna Bolo Bolo Re Shobha Shri Shri Radha Krishna Bolo Bolo Re Shobha Jai Shakal Vipod Bhaktivinoda Golin Chakunom Langai Jai Shakal Vipod Bhaktivinoda Golin Chakunom Langai. Come on now. Bhaktivinoda Golin Chakunom Hari Bol Bolo Re Jai Shakal Vipod Radha Krishna Bol Bolo Re Shobha Shri Shri Radha Krishna Bol Bolo Re Shobha Jai Shakala Vipod Bhaktivinoda Golin Chakunom Jai Radha Krishna Bolo Shange Cholo E Matra Bika Chai Krishna Bolbe jabe pula kahabe jorbe ampi bole Jeev Krishna Das e Vishwas kole to Miche man boshe jasho beshe kacho habu Shikariya Shamadiya Priche Niche Gonita Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Vaishnav Thakur Vaishnav Thakur Vaishnav Thakur Jaya Vaishnav Thakur
Jaya Vaishnav Thakur Vaishnav Thakur
Taigo Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Taigo Haribo Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakura ki jai Hare Krishna Well, if the band sticks around, maybe we'll do another bhajan later too. But if you have to go somewhere, that's okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Vidatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namashreshtam Manamapi Shachiputram Atra Swarupam Shri Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramoho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurun Tam Natosmi Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Nitaina Mineche Namirhate Sharamulye Namdite Chere Nitaina Mineche Namirhate Sharamulye Namdite Chere Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. The song we just sang, the beginning of it, Nitai Nam Iniche, Namir Hatte, Shadhamulyanim Dite Chere. This is a song Bhaktivinoda Thakura. He heard these words when he came into a kirtan with Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. The kirtan that he says changed his life when he became attached to Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. And all our advancement in devotional service, says Kaviraj Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, comes from Vaishnava association. Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vivo Tirtha Kurvanti Tirtani Swantakstena Gadabrita. The Vaishnavas have something nobody else has, is love for Krishna in their heart. Even if it's in the preliminary stage, it's something so noticeable when people meet a Vaishnav, because, as is mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami, a Vaishnav is free from the propensity to be critical of others. And therefore, when he or she speaks, the sound vibration is different. And the whole culture is meant for those who are non-envious. In the Gita, Krishna says, everyone's born into these propensities. Icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohina bharata. Sarva bhutani sammoham sargayanti parantapa. It's a big ocean of envy here in this material world. But the culture of the Vaishnavas is to not be envious of any living entity. And so there are several principles that we learn from the great Vaishnava acharyas. And for us, Bhaktivinoda Thakura is like our grandfather, our great-great-grandfather, who's the patriarch of our spiritual family. We're sometimes called the Bhaktivinoda Parivar. Everyone and everything we have comes from Bhaktivinoda Thakura. How so? The culture of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had been obscured. I don't say lost because it's never lost, but because of the power of time and the way the modes of material nature wring everybody out. You ever feel wrung out? Well, welcome to the material world. It's very difficult to stay as you are here in this world. Time is a crushing factor. And unless you have strong protection from the spiritual energy and association with devotees, then you end up crushed by the wheel of time. Nishpijamanam upakarsha vibo prapanam, Prahlad Maharaj said to Lord Nrsingadev, I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of being crushed by this big wheel of the material world. So even the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after a couple hundred years had become lost to the vision of the people of the world. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was at a critical time in history of India, history of the world. India, of course, was under attack. It was occupied by a foreign force, but also its culture was under attack. People had lost respect for the Vedic culture of India, especially the Vaishnava culture, for many different reasons. But partly because it had become niyamagraha. People were practicing only for the sake of practicing. They had no idea what they were doing. And generally, according to Michel's laws of oligarchy, when somebody gets some power, either in a spiritual group or in the government or anywhere else, then they spend all their energy trying to stay in power. And therefore, reformers are needed to come and break the stranglehold and distribute it. That is, it means the process and the mercy of the Lord to everybody. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur came at a time when there was no knowledge really of what dharma is, what Vaishnava dharma is, what the Jaiva dharma or the duty of the soul is, the purpose of the soul. And he, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was engaged in conversation with some of the intelligentsia, not just of India, but of the world. We know that he corresponded with scholars in various countries around the world. Eventually, with Thoreau, Emerson, there are other universities he was in contact with. Some of the India intelligentsia at that time, especially in Bengal, who were concerned with trying to develop a spiritual system that people would be able to practice with dignity. And because the dignity of the Vedic culture had been undermined very systematically at that time by certain outside elements, especially the British, there was low self-esteem in the country. So there was a group of intellectuals who had conceived of taking certain parts of the Vedas and also the Bible and combining them together, Brahmoism, idea of impersonal liberation and also the Savior, Jesus Christ, and so forth, all mixed together. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was in that think tank, but then he emerged as, in his own words, the first convert for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ostensibly, he was going through life like an ordinary personality. But acharyas appear in the world, and then when they emerge, we notice the force of their teachings and the sheer volume of it, and we can see that they're not ordinary people. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hid himself in Navadvip as a rambunctious scholar. So when Bhaktivinoda Thakur came out, it was due to finding out the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in association of his guru Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. And then he began to systematically bring them out. One of the great lessons to me is that when he wanted to find Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings in full, he had heard about the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Kaviraj Goswami, the book that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur once said, if all other books in the world slid into the ocean, if Chaitanya Charitamrita was preserved, there would be no loss. Whole Bhagavatam is there as a garland of verses, and the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are vital for everyone here in Kali Yuga and for all time. He finally, after great amount of effort, found the Chaitanya Charitamrita in Orissa and began to bring it out. This is a time when books were very rare, they're hard to get. Nowadays, we take it for granted, perhaps because we can print books, we can get them on demand, you can get them from Amazon within a day. Back then, books were hard to get. Printing presses were rarer at that time. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur then, after studying the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, came as the tip of the spear for his movement to revive it. And he began systematically bringing out the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so that it could spread all over the world. He realized that the mission statement for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had not been small. It was that it would go all over the world. It was not some provincial idea, but it was meant for every living entity. And Bhaktivinoda had such vision, and he had the wherewithal to make that happen. So it was from the heart and mind of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that the modern Krishna consciousness movement emerged. And he was dynamic in the way that he brought it out. There were several principles. First of all, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not afraid to organize religion. Sometimes when we're on the street and we meet people, tell me if you have this happen to you also. You might present a beautiful book, and for instance, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and then someone will say, oh, I don't believe in organized religion. There's a kind of resistance to the idea. There are several layers of psychology behind that, partly because people have felt that being part of a organized religion meant niyamagraha, that you just go there because everybody else does or your parents tell you to, and you have no idea what you're doing. And there's a lot of control over your life that you don't understand, so they reject it. And other people, just there's a intrinsic desire to not surrender to God, which is at a deeper level. And when you see something organized, it means now I can no longer be eclectic. I actually, if I read this, maybe I'll have to adhere to a well thought out system. As I say, many levels of psychology behind it. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur realized that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement was meant for everybody, and therefore he organized it. So here's the first principle. Actually, I'm not going to give them an order, but we can rearrange them later at the end according to what you all like. And I can't tell what you all like until I can see you. So if you like something and you want to open your window and smile, then I'll be able to tell. Or if you give me a frown like, what are you talking about? Then I'll adjust my presentation accordingly. So organization is a principle. This is not against the spiritual flow. We say, oh, I just like when I was managing a temple, we had a pujari and he came in about 2 hours late for Mangal Artik to do the Mangal Artik on a day. And then he said, well, it should be spontaneous, right? I mean, why all these rules and regulations? There's a way to worship Krishna so that one becomes spontaneous. And there's also their basic principles Bhaktivinoda Thakura wanted to bring to the world, but it would require a system of delivery. So he invented the multi-level marketing, and he conceived of a system called the Namhata, through which everybody would be empowered in their own home, in their own village, in the cities. There would be leaders who would step up and take responsibility for organizing everyone within their group to do the work of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We find this also as we're working. I just got off another call recent in the last hour or so, where we were talking to devotees from all over Europe and the UK. Is it still called the UK after the Brexit? No problem? Yes, no? Más o menos? Okay. And in these calls, we noticed that devotees, as we're building teams, when you introduce the idea of Sankirtan, which Bhaktivinoda Thakura described 3 or more people is called Sankirtan, Samyak Kirtan. And he also, and much of the information, detailed information I'm giving you today, I will back up if you wish. I have extensive notes I got from Krishna Abhishek Prabhu, who got his PhD in Bhaktivinoda Thakura and has a wealth of information, what to speak of original documents, pictures of his deities and so forth. But he was telling me about Bhaktivinoda Thakura's penchant for book distribution. And he was saying that he considered that also to be Sankirtan. Sometimes there's this debate, well, isn't Sankirtan just playing, singing and doing kirtan together? But Bhaktivinoda Thakura's idea was it's written kirtan, and when you distribute it, then the sound vibration goes out in written form. It lands in various places and the vibration expands. That's why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta picked it up. Same mood as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura and Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, same thing. So he emphasized this kind of organizing of the message. And we noticed that as we do that among ourselves, in the realm that we are in our ISKCON society, that devotees come in, and when they feel the energy of Sankirtan, some devotees step up and say, I'd like to do this more. And maybe I can offer my service in this way. And when we see this is part of the individual, spontaneous, and voluntary principle. Because we're a voluntary movement. When somebody steps up and says, I'd like to do this, and you see that special look in their eye, here's a leader. Bhaktivinoda Thakura's idea was empower that person right away. Give them the chance to take a responsibility to help spread Lord Chaitanya's movement. It's an open order. Anybody can take the order from anywhere in the world and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to follow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'm going to tell you one of my favorite sections of the Bhagavatam. It's in a purport to the Chatur Shloki. And Srila Prabhupada says that the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a manifestation of his internal potency. And it is by this potency that one can come to see the personality of Godhead face to face. This is the power of the order. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura took the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And then it was from his genius that he organized a system. He put it together. So it was marketing. Marketing means you got to think about how to present the product that everybody, so that everybody can get it. And they get it in a form that they can consume it. And so he gave various duties to people in the Namhata and made a chain of command coming all the way back to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is what the devotees did with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even Lord Nityananda and Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur, you'll find in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam and elsewhere, went out door to door. Did everybody take a book? Nikhil, did everybody take a book when Nityananda Prabhu went out? Did they like the message?
Not all of them, probably.
Not everybody?
I think most of them, but probably a few of them escaped.
Some people slammed the door on him. This is in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Nityananda Prabhu comes to your door and is like, no thanks, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. Slam the door. Some people accepted it. Other people invited them in and said, why don't you take prasad? And they said, no, we're not here to take prasad. We're here to beg something from you. And there are three things they would beg. One thing is chant Hare Krishna. Next thing is worship Krishna. And the third thing is hear Krishna's instruction. Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Koto Krishna Shika. So that's the second principle. The first is you have to organize. And the second is you have to beg. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura instituted this in a lot of his songs. For instance, we have to beg personally. This is the fulcrum of power of advancement in devotional service, I'm about to say. But I think we've run out of time, so I won't be able to impart it. Rasika? Session's over. Should I say what it is?
Yeah, plenty of time. We can carry on going with your presentation until.
Okay,
7.
lucky thing. Here's the principle. You got to beg. Does anybody know how to beg? Viva Bari, do you know how to beg? Vrindavan Sundar. Surabhi's there. How do you beg? See, if you don't know how to beg, then you can't make advancement in spiritual life, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Does anybody know how? Let's look it up. That way we can get a little education on how to beg. Beg. Okay, here's what the word means. As a verb, earnestly or humbly. Ask earnestly or humbly for something. Ask for something, typically food or money, as charity or a gift. Go begging. Be available for use because so beg, borrow, or steal. Do whatever may be necessary to acquire something greatly desired. Begging's one of the principles of Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So he says in one of his songs, Anachi Ashauri Maya Nashi Bharalagi. That's Harinam Mahamantra, Lao Tuvi Magi. The holy name is great medicine, but to get it, you have to beg for it. So you really have to put out your hand and beg. Well, let me ask a simpler question. I know that was a hard question, how to beg, but have you ever given to a beggar? Anyone? Rasika, why did you give to a beggar?
I heard this pastime that Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said it was okay in certain instances. So I thought, on that inspiration, I thought, let me just give it as well.
Okay, so you were already prepared in your mind, but let me ask this in a more basic way, why did you give to the beggar?
I guess,
let me give the answer I'm looking for. Because he or she begged. In other words, if they weren't begging, you wouldn't have given, right?
That's right.
That's my point. So if you don't ask, you don't get. But begging is really, it's kind of, it means it's earnest, it's humble. You don't have anything, so you're reaching out your hand, you're asking, please give, please give, please give, please give. And if we remember Prabhupada's signature on his diary on the Jaladuta, what's it signed? Do you remember how he signed it, Nikhil? Is that your actual name, Nikhil?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah, that is my name.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
I think it was something like your most insignificant beggar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a principle that Bhaktivinoda Thakura taught us, is you have to beg. And if you earnestly beg, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If you can get that desire to beg for devotional service, then you go out and beg from other people, please also take this. That's what's effective. That's what makes it all happen. Rupa Goswami gives us verse, Krishna Bhakti Ras Bhavito Mati Kriyatam Yadi Kritopi Labdyate Tata Mulyam Ekal Tata Api Laulim Ekamulyam Ekalam Janmakoti Sukritirna Labdyate Krishna Bhakti Ras Bhavito Mati Kriyatam Yadi Kritopi Labdyate Tata Lolyam. Lolyam means that you have to be in this mood of being greedy. Like some beggars are really greedy. They'll follow you for a mile until you give something. So be in that mood, Bhaktivinoda Thakura said. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur assigned people various roles according to their enthusiasm to be part of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement and the Namhata. And then he spread it out to many places all over the world. And their mood is this, and this is the third principle, you have to give mercy. Here's his mission statement, Jive Doi Krishna Nam Sarva Dharma Sar. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in one of his bhajans, Jive Doya Krishna Nam Sarva Dharma Sar. The sar, the cream, the essence of all religious principle is to give mercy to the jivas by distributing Krishna consciousness. That's a nice mission statement, isn't it? Yeah. So the three principles that I think are important to take away. One is that you have to organize. It's important to organize for the sake of distributing Krishna consciousness. Bhaktivinoda Thakur epitomized that. And that's why we have an organized system. Sometimes people say, all this organization, it's not spiritual. It's too organized. Well, this comes from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Organize for the greater good, because you can market something when you organize well. We're finding it in the greater book distribution movement now around the world, that when the more we organize, the more it gives opportunity for devotees to take part and join in the process of distributing Krishna consciousness. Second is that you have to beg. Learn to beg. When you chant japa, try putting your hand out, like, please, Krishna, give me one drop of taste. If you don't ask for it, how are you going to get it? And then number three is you have to give mercy. These are three tenets of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings. He put it like there's Diksha, Shiksha, and Bhiksha, these three. Diksha means that you make a vow to chant the holy name. And then Shiksha means you get fully educated in the process of Krishna consciousness. And Bhiksha, he said, was very important, to go out and beg. He did it himself. He went out, he was a high court judge. Who's a high court judge in the UK? What's the name of a high court judge? Like in the Supreme Court. You have a Supreme Court, right? Somebody look it up on Wikipedia. Who are the top judges? What's the top council there in your country? Ram Nam Prabhu, do you know? Oh, Dame Jennifer Eady. Thanks, Sadhu, for okay. Oh, and there's also Sir James Holman, the family high court judge. So one day, yeah, what will you think if Sir Anthony Mann, Dame Jennifer Eady, and Sir James Holman come knocking at your door and say, could you give a little donation? We're building a temple. Would that be funny? Yeah. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura was known as a high court judge at that time in India. He was famous, actually. And then people saw him out begging. He collected the money himself to build his temple. And he says this is important for devotees to learn this to humble themselves. It's also in the Nectar Devotion. You'll read Prabhupada talks about this. To go out. Oh, we also have Right Han, the Lord Reed of Alimur. Maybe he can go out begging too. So that's Bhiksha. And when do we beg people? Please chant Hare Krishna. Please worship Krishna, and please listen to his instructions. So we do all this when we're distributing Bhagavatam sets. We go to people's homes. Just ask one simple little thing. Take Krishna into your home. This morning, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj was exulting in the fact that the Shastra says if somebody keeps Vaishnava literatures in their home, then the devas worship your home. It becomes a worshipable place. I just say Bhaktivinoda Thakura is the coolest of the cool. I mean, if you just look at him, how cool he is. The way he dresses, the way he sits, and look at his lifestyle. You know, he had many kids, 13 kids. Every one of them had a service in the Sankirtan enterprise that he started at home. That's why people used to have a lot of kids, is so that the kids could be part of. Are you listening, Sachi? Yeah. So you could be part of the Sankirtan movement. Actually, people who lived in rural environments, they have lots of kids so the kids could work on the farm together. Kids were actually a great asset. I mean, they still are, but it's expensive. It's an artificial kind of economy nowadays. It's expensive to have kids compared to before. It was actually a great economic boon to have more kids. I'm not saying that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakura had kids, but he engaged all his kids in the Sankirtan movement. Every one of them, boys and girls, had a part in the enterprise to spread Krishna consciousness. He had a printing press. He was engaged in writing articles in one of the biggest news publications in India, which was called the Amrita Bazar Partrik. And it started in 1868 and it only ended in 1991. It was a very long-running newsletter, and he published articles there, and he wrote over 100 books for distribution. And he also got into international book distribution. Did you know, Nikhil Prabhu, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent books from India about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to various universities around the world? He sent them out to Harvard University, Oxford, universities here in California. He sent them to scholars like Thoreau, Emerson, Monier Williams. Who knows how many else he did, and he included cover letters. And I don't know what your postal system's like, but back then, I have no idea how long it would take to mail one book from a place. So painstakingly, he did that kind of work. So what we're doing in our Krishna consciousness movement is following in the footsteps of Bhaktivinoda Thakura. It's his mercy and his conception that was passed forward. Now, just so we can feel some human interaction, I'm going to take some reflections or questions just to see what you're all thinking. What else? What would you like to hear about more? And what questions do you have? Questions are hard. So if you don't have a question readily on your mind, then you can give a reflection. It means anything you heard that's stuck in your mind so far. Reflect back. You can just unmute and tell.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Ivanandas here. I was
How are you?
reflecting about the point you made from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life about begging. And I was reminded of our time in Jagannath Puri, that when the first time you noticed somebody who was receiving a book of Srila Prabhupada, and he immediately left his shoes off, took his shoes off. And then from that point, you shared that with everybody else. Then when you were distributing the books, everybody noticed you were taking the shoes off. And then everybody was in that bhav of dainya, taking the shoes off, and there was such a sweet exchange in the dham actually. So that was something nice. I wanted to reflect back.
Yeah, I discovered that by accident. One day in Orissa, we were having a Harinam in some village, and this guy on a motorcycle stopped and he started screaming at us in Oriyan. And I didn't know what was the matter, because we were just chanting the holy names. And then someone who could understand Oriyan came over and he said, he's angry because you're doing Harinam with shoes on. So in Orissa, if you go around town doing Harinam, you shouldn't wear shoes. Nor like on the Rath Yatra day, you don't wear shoes when you go into the Rath Yatra and things like that. So then I realized that was a local custom. So we just kick off our shoes. And we had Chinese devotees, Japanese devotees, European, American devotees, and we sold over 5,000 books in just a few days. And it was a wonder to see Chinese, Japanese, European, American devotees selling books to the people of Orissa, Bengal, and all different parts of India they didn't speak the same languages. It wasn't required because they had the spiritual enthusiasm to just show them the book and a language card, and they would take. Same thing on the last call. Oh, please go ahead, Minna. Was that who was about to say something? Okay, well, let me take another reflection. I want to hear from you. Pressure's on. Go ahead, Anju. I know you want to say something.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
One thing I was thinking about when you were sharing this principle of begging is that when we beg, the people that we're begging to think that we're a bit worthless. So will that kind of, in their eyes, diminish the value of what we're giving if we're approaching them as a beggar?
Well, you don't have to be ragged when you approach, but if you're saying just the very act of going out and it's seeming to be a demeaning that you're like that, I think that first thing I've noticed about that is at least from the perspective of the distributor or the beggar, it's a very healthy process, because when you go out and you become humble and meet people and accept whatever kind of chastisement they give you or whatever kind of disdain they might project to you, that's one of the reasons that we go out and why Bhaktivinoda Thakur went out. In fact, that's why Prabhupada talks about it in the Nectar of Devotion as a principle. From the other side, if there's a situation in which we don't, exactly fit in the way we look when we're going out. I mean, you have to get the body language right and the way that we're presenting in a way that fits the culture, just like kicking off our shoes in Orissa worked. So similarly, on a street corner in the UK, you might want to look a little spiffy. As a matter of fact, I know that I worked in airports for a long time. In fact, I lived in an airport, I think, for like 30 years. So to distribute books. And there were circumstances where people started looking at us as like, who are you, young punks walking around here selling, and thinking that we were like somehow kind of just a scourge on society or parasites or something like that. So at one period we got really nice clothes, and it kind of confused people because they're what called designer clothes, and we would wear really nice clothes when we went out, nice everything. So when people would see us, it kind of short-circuited their brain because they would see, yeah, well, they're selling books, they're asking for donations, but they look so sharp. I mean, we looked, as they say in America back in the 80s, we looked very preppy. We would emulate that style. I find nowadays going out in a dhoti is useful for me because I'm older now. People generally don't look down on older people as much as they do young people, thinking, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. But the other thing is, people oftentimes appreciate the fact that you're dedicated to some spiritual thing and that you'd go out in public wearing that. And another thing is that people feel guilty rejecting somebody who's wearing something spiritual, because then they think, well, that person might think I'm rejecting them based on their clothes, and I don't want to be superficial. So there's a lot to consider. It's not unreasonable. We don't just charge out there and say it doesn't matter how we look. What do the rest of you feel about this? Let's hear more comments and questions. And Rasika, you can't say anything more. And Divyanam, you can't say anything more. Only everybody else can comment. A reflection is easy. It just means anything you heard so far that's stuck in your mind that you can remember and you can feed back. Just try it and you'll see that it escalates the conversation or elevates it.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yay! Thank you.
Krishna Vani.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, like what I've experienced, that I've seen when people see somebody in a devotional clothes, they do appreciate it, So that's what I found. You go in the normal clothes, but if you go in the devotional clothes, people give more respect. And when you are wearing a tilak and kanti, they appreciate that. They think that you are some kind of practicing something spiritual, and they do appreciate. That's what I found out. Hare Krishna.
That's because you're doing it. You know what's going on. Those like yourself, Krishnavani, Devidasi, because you're actually doing it, you get the feedback from your environment and you kind of refine how you're doing it. So you get an idea about it. Yeah, nice.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, yes, when we wear devotional clothes, put tilak and everything on, people recognize us in the street, and also our own kind of the way we present is different to if we wear like trousers and shirt or skirt. So I find that when I wear devotional clothes, my outlook is different as well. And people are more willing to talk to us and things like that. Otherwise, it's just, you might be anybody, but wearing a tilak, kantimala, if possible, and also devotional clothes, it helps a lot in both directions. Giving
Nice.
out, yeah.
Thank you. Nice realization. I liked how you said from our point of view also, when you wear tilak, then you're thinking like, I should be a representative. and I should be exemplary the way I move in the world, because people are expecting a certain kind of behavior from a spiritually dedicated person. That was beautiful. Thank you very much. Kusum? Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. A couple more reflections. Let's hear.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I just had one reflection. You were talking about this point, about begging for Krishna, begging for devotional service, having that eagerness, that lolyam. It was just really interesting because I was listening to a lecture where Prabhupada was talking about the same thing just this morning. He was telling this story, probably devotees have heard this story, where a thief was hearing about Krishna and how he goes out every day with the cowherd boys and he's covered in jewels. So he was thinking that I would like to find this Krishna in Vrindavan and steal his jewels. So he goes to Vrindavan. He was extremely eager, extremely anxious to find Krishna. And Prabhupada explains that because of this eagerness, he was actually able to see Krishna because of that greed. And then after seeing Krishna, he was completely purified and he didn't want to steal the jewels anymore. So I just thought it was interesting. I heard the same point that you mentioned today.
Well done, Nikhil. Nice citation. Yeah, the verse goes, Krishna bhakti ras bhavitamati kriyatam yari kutopilabhyate tatra lalyam api mulyam ekalam janmakoti sukritirna labhyate. I mangled it last time. Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activities in hundreds of thousands of lives. It can be attained only by paying one price, that is intense greed, to obtain it. It is available, if it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. Nice. Well, that's our Sankirtan movement, is developing this greed for hearing about Krishna and chanting, and then going out and distributing it to other people. So there's a book distribution movement that you're all part of that's been emerging in the world recently. And one of the great phenomena has been the emergence of the Srimad Bhagavatam set, full sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. And several years ago, we noticed that there was this special day every year called Bhadra Purnima. It's the full moon during the month of Bhadra. And during that month, the Srimad Bhagavatam says, when you give away a set of Bhagavatams on that day, or you dedicate it to that day, then you get the gift of going back home, back to Godhead. So that was something that gave a rallying point for the distribution of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the first 2 years in the world, devotees, a little bit in the UK and also America and India, distributed some Bhagavatams, and were able to do about 7,000. But then last year in 2020, you probably heard about it, but we set a goal for 10,000 before the pandemic hit. And then when it hit, everyone was thinking, how are we going to do this? And then as it turned out, we were going to do it by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And worldwide, the devotees distributed over 20,000 sets of Bhagavatams, even amidst the very difficult circumstances. This year, the devotees are joining together again, and more centers around the world are joining in to participate. Even little places, we're finding little islands around the world where there's 2 devotees. They would like to be involved. And our goal this year is to distribute at least 25,000 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. One of the reasons that people don't take a Bhagavatam set in their house, do you want to know? You have to put a thumbs up if you want to know. Okay. I'm not seeing any more from the, okay. Surabi Kunj was set, and Sukom Larade. There, and then that smile will keep me going there. Okay, Rupal Shamohini is there. Zoom user. There's somebody named Zoom user on here. I'm going to change my name to Zoom user. I think that's more appropriate. One of the reasons that people don't like to take a Srimad Bhagavatam in their house is because it changes their whole life, and people don't like to change so much. I want to stay the same. I don't want anything to change. I want, the income to be the same or maybe a little more. I want to stay in my same place, everything same. When you move a Bhagavatam set into your house, you got to move other things out because it takes up space. And it's a reflection of who you are and what you are. So if you put a Bhagavatam set in your house and just say you have some guests or your family come over, they're going to notice it. And they're going to say, hey, what is this anyway? And then you have to admit, all right, I'm a Hare Krishna. Because you can't hide it. And the living entity is hiding from Krishna. That's what we're doing here in the material world, hiding out. And so Krishna comes after us and says, hey, why don't you just come back to Goloka? And like, no, thanks. I'm busy. I like going to work 10 hours a day and driving on the subway and breathing in smog all day. This is my choice. This is how I choose to use my free will to work like a donkey. And when you put the Bhagavatam in your house, it's a big sign to the world saying, I'm not going to work like a donkey anymore. I'm going to go back and play with Krishna. But they don't know it yet. So you have to be a little dexterous. You have to be dexterous like Krishnavani Devi Dasi and who was the other Mataji? Oh, there she is. Kusum Mataji. They're dexterous. Somebody look up what dexterous means. So, Monisha, what's the definition?
The definition of dexterous is showing or having skill, especially with the hands.
Yep. You have to have spiritual skill. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakura had that spiritual skill to organize a movement so that everybody could get Krishna consciousness. It's good work if you can get it. The rest of the work in the world is just to maintain the status quo. Bhagavatam says that's okay. You can maintain your status quo so you're healthy enough so that you can inquire about Krishna and you can help spread the Sankirtan movement. Divyanam Prabhu, what other kinds of questions do you think the devotees have, or what do you think we should cover?
I think, Maharaj, perhaps one of the things I have come across here is when we are distributing the Bhagavatam set for somebody who's completely new, devotees often come up with this question that something so elevated and so exalted as Srimad Bhagavatam has been given to someone who's probably not come in touch with other books like Bhagavad Gita, etc. So maybe you can speak something about that, Maharaj. That would be very helpful.
About what specifically? Say again.
In relation to how something as exalted as Srimad Bhagavatam, how come we are giving to so many new people in the world who have not heard of even Bhagavad Gita or other books of Srila Prabhupada, for example?
We're crazy. But we didn't start it. Lord Chaitanya started it. It's mentioned there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that they were like madmen. When Sarup Damodar heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that he went a little mad. It's spiritual madness. Nothing wrong with that. And Mahaprabhu and his associates, look at the language. They broke open the storehouse of love of God and ate and distributed its contents. And the more they distributed it, and they didn't care who was a fit or unfit candidate, then the more the contents increased. So, Prabhupada came and everybody in India, not everybody, but most people, even God brothers said, you can't do that. These people, they can't, look, you got them cooking for you. Come on. These people are the lowest of the low. Even when God brother came and he didn't want to eat the prasadam because as it was cooked by one of the Western devotees. So reformers appear to be a little mad because they break the molds. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's thing was nobody's qualified. You know what they say in the Marines here in the United States? I saw it on a t-shirt. You want me to say? Kill them all, let God sort them out. Kill them all, let God sort them out. So spiritually, we go for everybody, let God sort them out. So that's a sort of and enthusiasm that we have. Of course, we have to be sensible. Like Abhinav Prabhu put up this point about, being sensible about, how we integrate. Yeah. People sometimes ask me, what should I wear on Sankirtan? I say, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Don't worry about it. It's not the clothes that matter so much, although, they can have an influence on people. It's just as we've been discussing, but the main point is when you feel comfortable in your own skin and you're able to do your duty. Actually, it's more than duty. It's like taking advantage of the greatest opportunity you could possibly have. Like to be able to go and distribute books from any position, it puts you in a kind of spiritual bubble that is incomparable.
Maharaj, if we have your permission, Rasika Rai Prabhu had 2 or 3 slides he wanted to present in your presence to the.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Firstly, a massive thank you to the youth of ISKCON Silicon Valley. I don't think we've ever experienced a bhajan like that over Zoom, ever. It's incredible. I felt like I was right there in the States with you all, and you've definitely increased my desire to be with you all in person. So hopefully we can make that reality very soon. If the devotees on this call could show their appreciation with all their thumbs and all their clapping hands virtually for all the ISKCON Silicon Valley youth, that would be amazing. So no, hats off to you all. And of course, Vaisesika Prabhu, a wonderful presentation. I feel like my inspiration tank is now overflowing. Now we're armed with these three principles you shared with us. Got to get organized. We've got to beg, and we've got to somehow or other give out the mercy. I've just taken this book out of the bookshelf. It's ready for tomorrow. Bhaktivinoda Thakura's songs. Thank you so much for giving us all this inspiration. Now that we're so inspired, now that we're feeling fired up, what do we do with that? How can we do something tangible with this Srimad Bhagavatam mission that Vaisesika Prabhu was so wonderfully speaking about? So we have a few slides, a few things that we want to share with you, so that we can also take up this mission, follow in the footsteps of Bhaktivinoda Thakura, and do something. So as Vaisesika Prabhu was sharing, this year the global ISKCON community has a 25,000 Bhagavatam set goal. And we want to achieve that by the auspicious day of Bhadra Purnim, and that's on the 20th of September. So for those of us that are connected to Bhaktivedanta Mana, we've got a small portion of that. We've got a 400 set goal. It's an increase from last year. We had a 300 set goal last year. We managed to smash that. And this year, considering it's the 125th appearance anniversary of Srila Prabhupada, we thought, let's do something big. Let's do something to make a special offering for Srila Prabhupada and offer 400 Bhagavatam sets. So that means we can all get involved. And the first option is to buy a set. If we haven't got a set already, then what are you waiting for? Now is the chance. If you have a look at these brand new sets that have just been imported from Germany, they look beautiful. You could be one of the very lucky ones that have these sets in your home. 18 volumes, extremely beautiful. They're about the same size as the Krishna book, newly printed, newly imported, just a bit of transcendental goodness that will do you well for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and beyond. And it's really, really special, incredible stuff. So if we go back to that original slide, we can see how we can get our hands on this. It's only £175. But if you've already got one, that's fine. You could gift it to someone. And you can go on that link and find a special person that you could change the life of and make a gift. If you've got one for yourself, but you don't know who to gift it to, then you can always sponsor one or some or more. There's no limit to how many you can sponsor. They're only £175. And if you decide to sponsor one, then what will happen is the team will, on your behalf, place them in different spaces where before the Bhagavatam wouldn't have been available. So many fortunate persons can come in contact with the nectarian words of Vyasadeva, the magnum opus of Srila Prabhupada, prisoners in prisons, patients in hospitals, students in schools and universities, all these people who originally wouldn't be able to tap into that mercy, by your mercy, would be able to make something of their lives. And you can also join the team and start calling and messaging and become beggars yourselves. That link, krishnatemple.com/Bhadra, is the one for you. Or if you want to take it a little bit slow, because we do have a little time until the 20th of September when this campaign ends, then by all means, have a look at the second link, bit.ly/signup Bhadra21. A little bit of a disclaimer, this second link is case sensitive, so be careful when you're typing it in to the address bar. All the details are also in the chat. If you click on the second link, then you can just sign up, express your interest, and we'll give you all support to help you between now and the 20th of September to distribute, gift, or sponsor one set. And it's as simple as that. Bhaktivinoda Thakura has left us a legacy. Let's do something tangible with it. And it's not just English sets we have. There's sets in Gujarati, Bengali, Hindi, Tamil, and Telugu. So that's something really special. That's an incredible thing we can all do. The motto is a little from a lot. It's going to happen. You just got to see if you want to be a part of it or not. I just want to ask His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu if he wants to add something to what we've just shared to just round up the session for us. Any final moments or thoughts for inspiration to help us and push us on this mission for Srila Prabhupada?
Yes, Prabhu. First of all, I love your presentation. You're really brilliant. And the movement that all of you have created there, Pandavasena, and all the outreach that you're all doing is just amazing and wonderful. And thank you to everybody. How many minutes do I have? 6? We have a new tune I want to sing you, because when you hear this Hare Krishna tune, then you won't be able to stop going out into the street and dancing and distributing Srimad Bhagavatam sets just by hearing the new tune. May we? Rasika? Okay. Avantika, are you still there?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay, let's go. Great Wall of China.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Want you to do part 3.
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare. Sing it, Sadhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki, Shri Harinam Mahamantra ki, Shri Harinam Prabhu ki, Transcendental Srimad Bhagavatam distribution ki, Mandala ki, UK Yatra ki, Go Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Rasika Roy Prabhu, thank you very much for having us. Thanks to everybody for joining. This morning, if we were with you, we'd go out in the streets and dance, chant, and go door to door.
Big thank you. And beg. A big thank you to His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu for leading such a wonderful program. It's feeling so full of inspiration and nourishment. Going to dive straight into Monday morning with lots of enthusiasm. And now I'm sure you've got us all thinking, how can we contribute to this Bhagavatam mission? How can we do something for the Bhadra campaign? How can we somehow or other distribute at least one Bhagavatam set between now and the 20th of September? The links are in the chat. Please do click on one of them or both, or yeah, there's only two. So please do click on one of them. And thank you all so very much. A massive shout out to the youth of ISKCON Silicon Valley. We really hope we could have you every single time we have a Pandavacana program. We might have to fly you over when things go, when the lockdown leaves. So definitely let's do something in the future. But no, a massive thank you. I can see in the chat lots of gratitude and appreciation for Vaisesika Prabhu and his team are pouring in. So let's all, with our virtual reaction buttons, show lots of appreciation, lots of gratitude, lots of enthusiasm in the chat. Let's send messages of love, and let's somehow or other make something of this Bhadra campaign and distribute many Bhagavatam sets following in the footsteps of Bhaktivinoda Thakura for Srila Prabhupada's 125th appearance anniversary. His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu ki.
Kripasinabhevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Premanande Hari Bol. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Beautiful.
Rama Rama Hare Hare Go Premanande Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Have a wonderful evening wherever you are.
Hari Bol.